You can lose fat easier and keep it off easier if you know how to measure your metabolism and you can track its changes. Welcome back, Weight Warriors. If you're someone who's on a fat loss journey like I am, or you're planning to start one, you're in the right place. I'm Mike. I'm a fat guy who's trying to not be fat anymore by making lifestyle changes. First things first, let's talk about why you should measure your metabolism and why it's so important for a fat loss journey. Your metabolism is really the whole system in what burns the calories that you consume and the fat on your frame when you consume less calories than your body needs. It's actually really, we're looking at your metabolic rate that we're calculating here. And that is what determines, again, how many calories you burn while you're at rest and while you're doing activity. So by understanding your metabolism, you can make an informed choice about your diet and exercise routine, which makes losing fat so much easier. Now let's dive into the different methods that you can use to measure your metabolism. Now there are essentially two main methods that you can use to calculate your metabolism. There is a third, but for the most part, it's extremely technical and only available when people are doing like medical research, and not the average person is going to have access to do a full-on scan like this. From what I gather, this is called like a direct calorimetry test. Let me read off what this is so I make sure I don't mess it up. But this involves spending an amount of time in a tightly controlled room known as a calorimeter, and with little to no movement whatsoever. This, like I said, this is really reserved for those who are doing research studies, and again, very difficult to get your hands on a test like this or to be a part of a test like this. So for the most part, I'm probably not even going to discuss this as one of the two options that I'm really giving today. But I did want to note there is a third if you're a part of a research lab. So really the two methods we have is an indirect calorimetry test, which again, I'll read this. This is when you go into an office and they measure the exchange of oxygen and carbon dioxide in your body. You wear a mask, you sit in a chair, and for the most part, I believe it's called, and we'll talk about the RMR, which is Resting Metabolic Rate, versus a BMR, which is your basal metabolic rate. Essentially, there's a few changes in how they do this test and which one's more accurate, but similarly, my understanding is they're done in the similar method here. And then finally, I would say there's the third method, which is calculating your TDEE, which is your total daily energy expenditure. But I am going to go over testing again your RMR, which again, RMR is measuring the number of calories you're burning at rest, and TDE takes into account your whole activity level throughout the day and gives you kind of a number, but it is an assumed calculation with your TDEE, and it's one that it's pretty easily to run. There's a lot of calculators online, but it can definitely help you when you're on a weight loss journey. Specifically, when you're calculating your TDEE, you could use a metabolic rate calculator. And again, something online, there's a lot of factors that come into play when you do calculate this out. Stuff like your age, your weight, your height, your gender. These things are used to calculate your RMR or your BMR. I've also gathered that there's some handheld devices that measure different things like comparing your breath and oxygen consumption. These devices are more accurate, and the results that they give you a better understanding of your overall energy expenditure. But again, a lot of us probably might have access to that, so I just recommend using reliable online calculators. And once you've measured your metabolism, it's time to track your progress and make adjustments to your diet accordingly, and possibly increase or make changes to your exercise routine. Personally, I track my metabolism closely, especially since I recently was on a cut and I'm starting another calorie deficit actually next week. And so if I have a better understanding of where I'm at with my metabolism, it helps me not fail when I'm trying to cut for, months on end. And it really helps give me a guide. So when I struggle, I can adapt and make changes with, routinely doing this calculation. One more tip that I am working on myself is I'm trying to keep a food diary, or at least tracking what I eat, primarily at least tracking my calories. That way, again, changes in my metabolism, I can quickly identify patterns and make informed choices. While I listen to my body, it again helps me make adjustments to my calorie intake and exercise intensity based on the calculations and really how I'm feeling. And again, with that tracking, all that data is used to make informed decisions, because it's all about finding that sweet spot where I'm burning fat efficiently, but I'm not going too over the top. And so that's why, again, more data is good. Now, talking about some common mistakes that I've seen when people are measuring their metabolism, probably the biggest one that I've seen is people measure or run this measurement once and then assume that information is going to be accurate for like months on end, when ideally you're losing weight on this fat loss journey. And so you really should be rerunning these calculations probably every 2 weeks or so. Now, remember, these tools are just one piece of the puzzle, and it is important to take a holistic approach when you're on a weight loss journey. That's why it's really helpful to have someone someone in your corner, whether that's a nutrition coach or a personal trainer or an accountability buddy, whoever it may be, you having someone who can help rerun these numbers with you and kind of be a sounding board to get feedback on is really helpful. Now, we've covered the importance of measuring your metabolism and the different methods you can use and how to track your progress and make adjustments along the way. But remember, this is just the beginning of the journey. There's a lot more to it, but embrace this process and be consistent, and never forget that you have the power to achieve your weight loss goals. And I like to talk about 80-20, as far as 20% of the things we do yield 80% of the results. Having the information to make the calculations around your metabolism, around your metabolic rate, your TDEE, this is absolutely in the 20% of things that are important that you do that yield 80% of the results. Knowing this information is huge, and I highly recommend that you start with running your numbers to figure out where your calories should be at on a daily basis while you're doing a cut or a calorie deficit.